Now, please join me in welcoming the Chairman and CEO of the Kroger Company, Rodney McMullen. Rodney will be interviewed by Grocery Shop Senior Vice President of Content, Christina Gustafson.
Awesome. Wow.
Isn't this cool?
This is fantastic.
Live people in person, not on Hollywood squares.
Yes. Well, thank you, Rodney, for joining us. Grocery Shop 2021, back in person.
Delighted to and honored to.
Awesome. Well, I want to dive right in because you guys have been making announcements left and right over the past couple of days. And the first thing I want to dive into is this Instacart partnership that you guys just announced. 30-minute delivery in case anyone in the audience missed it, coming from, I believe it's 2,700 stores. But of course, this is not the first time you guys have tested 30-minute delivery. You launched Kroger Rush, or tested Kroger Rush, back a couple of years ago. So talk me through why you think this time's different.
Yeah, I love the question. And I think one of the things that's always important when somebody asks me about one specific part of our ecosystem is to remind people it's really an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So when you look, our objective is to make sure that we're available for the customer any way they want it. So if that's a physical store, it's a physical store. If it's delivery, if it's online, suggestions, everything in between. And one of the things that we discovered is if you look at our market share for quick, convenient type orders, our market share was significantly below our overall food market share. And our overall food market share is about 10% in the US. And so then we started saying, okay, now how do we do it? Mm-hmm. And a couple of years ago, as you mentioned, we tested Kroger Rush. And the thing about that's convenient business is the volume has huge swings in it.
Yes.
And when you look at us doing it with permanent people, it was just hard to manage that swing. Mm-hmm. So that's really what caused us to look at other companies. And we already had a strategic relationship with Instacart, and this is just a further of that strategic relationship.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure having a partner does make it easier, especially when you're not necessarily expecting when those wild swings in demand are going to come. But I mean, to your point, ultra-fast delivery is an increasingly crowded market. You have a lot of competitors in this space with capital to burn. I think some additional challenges that you guys have are, 25,000 SKUs, as I mentioned before, 2,700 stores. Those stores are not always in the densest urban markets. So talk to me a little bit about the processes and technologies that are actually going to make this work?
Yeah, to me on the question, the way you asked it, it was really looking at the negative of it. And I think it's important to look at the positive of it because, if you look at the overall ecosystem, the customer doesn't have to compromise anymore. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to compromise on speed. You don't have to compromise on SKUs, i.e. 25,000. You don't have to compromise on quality, on freshness, all those things that are important. And if you look in the past, a customer had to compromise on something. So really on this, a customer doesn't have to compromise because you're able to leverage our supply chain system. Things that are picked in the field, today will be in our stores tomorrow or Tuesday in some cases. And being able to leverage that whole supply chain from a freshness standpoint. And then from a technology standpoint, being able to leverage the technology we have and the technology Instacart has to do something that's really unique and not easily or readily available in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It is sort of, to your point, a differentiated offering versus what some of those other fast delivery partners are offering out there.
Well, you talk about the people with a lot of money, and usually the number of SKUs are, 2,000 or 3,000.
Yep.
And what we find is that will satisfy 70%, but 30% really is you're doing a recipe and you need some oddball spice that you forgot to buy.
Yep.
So, how do you get that? And the glue is being able to offer that total variety.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting too to see what you guys are learning. I know this is only a week old, so we'll have to have you back next year. Yeah. But just hearing about, what sort of those most popular products are, what are you seeing from your customers in terms of what they are forgetting and needing? I'm sure during football season, it's probably a little bit different than other times of year.
Yeah, it's different on days of the week and time of the day. Now, it's a week old. So what we're finding so far is the basket is a little bigger than we were expecting. Okay. And if you look at late in the evening, it's usually something that involves some type of sin. So alcohol, ice cream, those kind of things. Something that probably somebody wouldn't have taken the time to go out and do it.
Yeah, maybe they're a little embarrassed too. Yeah. But yeah, let's shift gears. I want to talk a little bit about your recent earnings report. You had stronger than expected Q2 results. You boosted your full year profit outlook. Tell me a little bit about, the drivers of that. Do you think this really is representative of a long-term consumer shift toward more grocery shopping, or is this just, hey, Delta spiked and so our sales spiked?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important to remind people is that we were internally, obviously you don't know it externally, but internally we were tracking above the estimates even before the Delta variant picked up. And what we're finding is from a long-term trend standpoint, people are liking cooking at home. They like showing off their new skills with friends. And they love doing events as family in a different kind of way than pre-pandemic. And I'm sure everyone here is probably the same way. Before you did family events or things with your friends because it felt like the right thing to do. And now people are so energized just by being in person. And I know last week we had our first Kroger board meeting in person. And it was so hard to manage time because everybody was so excited about seeing each other again. And when you think about your question, people love food and they love showing off their skills. So those are things that we believe are long-term trends. Yep. The other thing that customers are telling us is from a budget standpoint, they find that it's a lot easier to stretch your budget when you're cooking at home, and it's easier to be a little healthier.
Yeah, and I know you and I were talking too. I mean, it's not just the stretching the budget, it's also the value of money these days. And so with the labor crunch that of course you guys are facing as well, but restaurants are facing, it sometimes doesn't feel, that it's as worth their while to go and spend that extra money out at restaurants these days.
Yeah, when you think about, from a restaurant standpoint, my neighbor owns a bunch of steak restaurants, and I was talking to him and his daughter last week, and she runs them. And, they're about 1/3 less people than they would like, and being able to give the service levels they want, and they've had to raise their prices. So, when you think about it from a customer standpoint, the prices are high, the service isn't as good. And, those are the things that I think I really feel bad for the restaurant channel because those are challenges. I mean, we have challenges, but I'll take ours over theirs.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about your inflation on your business then. I mean, is it something that seems pretty manageable at this point? Obviously, it's something that's been impacting, labor costs, price of consumer packaged goods. How do you mitigate that, and how do you sort of see that playing out with your consumers? Yeah,
it's a great question. And one of the things from a labor cost standpoint, 3 years ago when we embarked on what we called Restock Kroger, we decided to significantly invest additional dollars in wage costs and labor. And over the last 3 years, we've invested an incremental $850 million in our associates from a wage standpoint, plus benefits and Feed Your Future, things like that. And we're investing another $350 million this year. So for us, it was always part of the plan to continue to invest. And our average hourly rate now is north of $16. Okay. And our benefits are another $5 an hour. So it's $21 an hour of total benefits. Yeah. Now, it's still, we really try to inspire people to come for a job and make it a career. And 70% of our store managers came as an hourly associate and over time got promoted. So, for us, it's really important to see that. And our purpose as an organization is to feed the human spirit. Mm-hmm. And it's so much more than just feeding people, because you're helping people have a good day.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the cost to the consumer, because obviously, as you are, paying higher wages, you're facing some shortages, whatever it might be. Are you finding that you're having to pass off some of those additional costs to the consumer, or have you really been able to sort of absorb those so far?
It's a little bit of both, because one of the things, we do a lot of process changes every year. Mm-hmm. So everything that we're able to do from a process standpoint, we're able to give that benefit to our customers. Okay. And then we also invest in our associates a lot from a technology standpoint to make their job a little bit easier. And when you look at innovation, we always think innovation's equally as important to make our associates' job easier as it is trying to make the customer a little easier to shop with us.
Right. So basically taking some of the savings from that so that you're not having to pass the costs off to consumer. Private label, I know we'll get to in a little bit, because I'm sure that's also a component of it. But one other thing I want to touch on from your earnings report, I thought it was really fascinating as we're all trying to figure out, where e-com is going to net out. You actually saw people going back to the stores, right? right, when COVID was subsiding, but then you saw this flip back to online when the Delta variant started to surge. What does that tell you about where this is headed 5 years from now?
Yeah, to me, I get excited about it because overall, from a long-term trend standpoint, we've always believed that digital is going to continue to grow in the supermarket business. And if you look at COVID, it basically accelerated 3 years worth of transition in 2 weeks. Yep. A little bit of it went back, but not much. And almost every customer that was shopping with us digitally moved to shopping with us in store. So we didn't lose them out of our ecosystem.
Interesting.
They just went back to the store versus online. And for us, that's a critical part because, we want that customer. We want to have a customer when you think food, you think Kroger.
Yep.
And when you tie all of it together, it makes it easy. And that was, to me, we've always had the theory of it, but it was the first time we had a true data point that the customer really did switch from one to the other in a totally seamless way.
Yeah. That's interesting, kind of staying within your ecosystem. And that's good to hear because I know you guys do have a big goal for your digital business, doubling both the size and profitability rate of your digital business by 2023, which if anyone's paying attention, that's not very far away. So talk to me.
I know that.
You're feeling the heart palpitations?
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the specific steps that you are planning to take to get there.
Yeah, our digital business, if you go back 5 years ago, it was zero. Last year, it was north of $10 billion. So, when you think about a business within a business, if that was a standalone business, people would be going, holy cow, how do you go from zero and then over north of $10 billion? And our commitment is to take it to $20 billion. And it's going to be a combination of really the overall ecosystem that I talked about. So if you think about in Florida and Monroe, Ohio, we have sheds, and it's using a technology powered by Ocado. And I noticed on the intro, Luke was one of the speakers from 2019. But that's one piece of the puzzle is, the shed. It allows us to go into new markets. And when you think about new markets, the transferability or we call it sister store impacts is zero because it's net new ground. So that's an integral part, certainly the Instacart announcement.
Yep.
We also have things that we're testing with Hometown, where it's a pickup service that's in a town that doesn't have a grocery store in it.
Interesting.
And usually dollar stores are your biggest competitors in those kind of markets. But it really is trying to be wherever the customer is, ever how they want. And we're using Home Chef, both in terms of in-store delivery and their own delivery ecosystem. So am I supposed to read between what you just said that perhaps we're going to be seeing more customer fulfillment centers in areas where you do not have physical stores? America is a pretty big map, and if you look, basically about a third of the United States we don't operate today, and for us to our aspiration is to feed America through food inspiration and uplift. So. Yeah. I think it'll take that at some point, but one step at a time. You don't eat an elephant overnight. Fair enough. I'm sure you have a lot going on just getting those two centers up and operational. I want to talk to you a little bit, though, about profitability. We touched on this a little bit before, but that's a big piece of the goal as well. And I think everyone in this room is watching the growth of retail media networks in particular, and you guys really were a front runner in this space. So as you see others sort of encroaching on this territory, what are you doing to stay ahead of the curve? Are there new features, new capabilities that you guys are introducing in order to kind of keep people in your ecosystem? Yeah, one of the things that's incredibly, when I'm talking to our investors, the people I work for, I always tell them job one is don't lose the customer. Job two is to figure out how to make money on that, serving that customer. They probably like to hear that part. Yeah, because it's not a hobby and don't expect it to be a hobby. So it's really the combination of both of those. And one of the things that we're discovering is we have 11 million people a day coming into our stores and 4 million people a day coming to online. And that creates a lot of opportunities to monetize that traffic in ways the customer actually finds valuable. And like our retail media, we're not going to advertise Coke to a Pepsi customer and vice versa, because that doesn't do us any good, and I'm sure we could get revenue from it. But we're really trying to figure out a way where all boats rise. Right. And last year, I think one of your competitors did some work on retail media, and they evaluated the 5 major retail media channels. Mm-hmm. And in 3 of the 5 measures, we were number 1. The other 2, we were tied for number 1. Mm-hmm. So, that's offering something to CPGs they can't get somewhere else. So we're able to help them more efficiently spend their money. And then also, obviously, there's some profitability associated with that, which will be a key part of allowing that doubling of profit.
Yep.
That we talked about.
So basically just continuing to invest there, make sure you're delivering to your CPG partners. I want to talk a little bit about innovation within Kroger, because we have talked about a laundry list of things already that you guys are investing in. I would love to peek under the hood at how these decisions are made. Do you have one innovation unit within the company that's responsible with looking at all of these things, or is it kind of like, okay, supply chain guys, look at supply chain investments, marketing team, look at marketing tech? What's the deal there?
Yeah, that's one of those things. Another one, I love the question, and it's you ask the question so much simpler than it is inside. We have an R&D team. They're primarily focused on technology innovation and using our data in new ways. And like one of the things, that group is who created our Q-Vision in our stores. So we're able to reduce the time in lines for customers by 90%. So you have that group, but you also have it within pockets. So when I think about innovation around our associates, that is really driven by our operations team partnering with our R&D team and our technology team. Mm-hmm. And our store associates and warehouse associates to say, if we give you this, how do you like this? And literally, I've been to a couple of these meetings where they say, well, this is great, but if you change this, it would make it better.
Yeah.
And, it just keeps cycling.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, though, because, it's one of those things sometimes if no one's in charge, it just kind of doesn't get done. So you kind of have this R&D team that really is sort of spearheading it, but then they're working in collaboration with each of the functional units. Yeah. Is that a fair assessment of it?
Yeah, and one of the things that you can't let your ego get in the way, because failure is no big deal. It's not a problem to fail. And I know probably everyone in this room, failing is not something that you aspire to do. And on R&D, there are times where you do something and you just have to throw it away and move on. Mm-hmm. And there's something that was called a scan tunnel that I actually was one of the patent holders on it. And it worked incredibly well. Unfortunately, not very many customers liked it. Mm-hmm. So, you
was it just
move on.
Literally just kind of...
Literally, you put your groceries on a belt, and it scans it when it goes through, and all somebody has to do is bag it. But guess what? Now we have an app where you can do it on customer can do it on their phone, so they can scan it as they're as they're shopping. Yep. Put it in a bag, and you don't even need to go through a checkout.
Yep. So kind of taking the concept, but doing it a little smoother, I suppose, although I think that idea sounds very fun for what it's worth. I want to shift gears because we're running short on time. This month actually marks the 4-year anniversary of Zero Hunger, Zero Waste. Talk to me a little bit about what you've achieved so far, and I think even more importantly, what's next?
Yeah, it's one of those things where when we set out the goal originally as Zero Hunger, Zero Waste, we knew we couldn't do it on our own. And we've partnered with, obviously, food banks. We've partnered actually with some of our competitors. And it's one of the most inspiring things because, I mentioned before, our purpose is to feed the human spirit. And in the United States, no one should go to bed tonight hungry. And unfortunately, a lot of people do. And 40% of the food that's produced is wasted in our supply chain. If you look at so far, we've been able to provide well north of 1 billion meals. Last year was 640, I think at 1.8 billion since we've embarked on this, 640 million last year, enough to feed Iceland for 5 years. And, to me, those are the things where it's so inspiring for our teams to be able to do that and give back to society. And one of the things that for being here, Kroger is committing, there's a local food bank here called 3 Square Food Bank, and it's the only food bank in southern Nevada. And for every attendee, we will donate 10 meals on your behalf as part of that. And it's if you don't know about them, they started in 2007 by the Filton family. and just world-class executives that are helping make this world a better place, and it's an incredible, important partner to us.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and it's exciting that we can be a part of such an important initiative with you guys. I know we have like 15 seconds left, but I'm going to sneak one more in. Curious what the biggest change the company made to how it works during the pandemic that's going to stick?
Yeah, that question we ask ourselves all the time, and you hear all the things about speed and not being afraid to make a mistake, and you just go ahead and make a decision. The biggest thing that we do now is when we start getting back to our old ways, we actually remind ourselves that we don't need to do that. We need to stay. And it was fascinating. Our teams were incredibly pumped because they were being depended on so much more, and we just have to continue to remind that. Yep. And unfortunately, I don't think COVID's going to go away. I hope I'm wrong, and it's something that we're going to have to live with.
Yep. But keep on innovating and keep
Absolutely.
that positive spirit and momentum. And it was wonderful chatting with you. I can't believe 20 minutes is up. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Christina. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.